What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for joining us. I am super pumped to have Katie Miller on with us tonight. Katie was a guest on our Back to Pack Evergreen retreat, which was amazing. And she is a ICU nurse and an EMT and in school. I'm like, I don't know when you have time to do this, but somehow she has time. She made time, rather, I should say, to complete the New Hampshire 48, otherwise known as the NH48, which is hiking all of the 4,000-foot peaks in New Hampshire. And I'm just super excited to hear about her journey. So I'm just going to give it away to you, Katie. Go for it.
Oh, thank you so much. Before I get started, I will just pull up the little presentation I made. So bear with me for one sec for my not super tech savvy self. All right, we are in business. Well, thank you guys so much for this opportunity. I'll preface that I am not as great of a public speaker as Laura. I'm still growing into it. But I'm so thankful for this opportunity from both Laura and just all of the Back of the Pack community to share this journey, because it's something that I am not only really proud of, but I've learned a lot through this process, more than I ever thought I would. I just wanted to do a little quick introduction about myself. Laura already touched on some of it, but I am, like she was saying, currently an ICU nurse living in New Hampshire. I've been here about 4 years, but I did spend most of my life born and raised in Eastern Pennsylvania. Went to Penn State for undergrad, which I am a diehard Penn State football fan. I'm sorry if that's a problem for anyone. When I'm not hiking, I spend a lot of time doodling, like I showed right up above there. I also do an obscene amount of reading and listening to music. But when I am outside, I am pretty much the doer of all things, whether it's, of course, hiking, biking, skiing, kayaking, you name it. I'll kind of coin one of Laura's phrases that I'm a jack of all trades, but master of none. Because I just love trying new things and putting myself out there. And just as a fun little side tidbit, I am a self-proclaimed best dog aunt, as evidenced by that picture there on the bottom. First, I figured I would sort of explain what these lists are a little bit and how New England is obsessed with them. I know out west there's the 14er list, I'm sure many others, but we have quite a few here just in the state of New Hampshire. First is 52 with a view, which these are, as the name suggests, all summits that have really great views, but they're all below 4,000 feet of elevation. Next are the terrifying 25, that, as that name also suggests, they're trails with gnarly rock slides, steep scrambles, boulder caves, things like that. And they're considered to be often very rugged and some of the most, quote, dangerous in the White Mountain National Forest, where all of these hikes are located. And last but not least, there's the NH48, which I'll be mainly talking about today, which is the 48 mountains in New Hampshire that are all above 4,000 feet in elevation. And I figured to kind of segue into lessons that I learned throughout this journey, I figured I would start talking about where it began and kind of fast forward to where it ended. So back when I was in nursing school in 2019, a friend that I had just met, she was like, hey, let's go hiking. It's going to be the greatest thing ever. I was naive. I asked no questions. And little did I know, we were doing a huge traverse that included 3 mountains, 2 of which were 4,000 footers, hiking down a steep waterfall, and just so many things that I was physically or mentally not prepared for. I describe this hike as being filled with blood, sweat, and tears, quite literally. Not only had I never done hiking like this before, I took a tumble while trying out my hiking poles for the first time. I do not recommend learning how to use hiking poles in this kind of environment. Tore up a pair of leggings. It was so great. And also towards the end, my legs were like jello. I'm definitely literally shed some tears and had a few bits of crying as we were descending down some steep waterfalls. Needless to say, hiking the NH48 was not on my radar at that point in time. I didn't even know the list existed, honestly, and I didn't hike another one for quite some time. My next 4,000 footer wasn't coincidentally for another year. In 2020, I just kind of did one on a whim with a coworker, and I had just been hearing about the list, and it kind of sparked my interest and just kind of exploded after that, with the last 2 years being the bulk of my hikes. And fast forward, oh yeah, what's up?
What made you go back after that
What
first
made me go back?
Yeah. Is it just like a case of, I mean, to me, it sounds like classic, like type 2 fun. Like, was it something where in the moment you're like, this sucks, and then afterwards you were like, wow, that was really like badass?
Absolutely type 2 fun. In that way, I guess I'm sort of a glutton for punishment, because even hikes that I do today, I'll sort of have that feeling of misery inside, and I'll just keep going back for it, like time and time again. It was definitely peer pressure also a bit to get back out there, because I did have slight scarred feelings and those memories of falling and just the downright fear that I had. But I was just mesmerized by the mountains, and I just needed more of it.
Awesome. Love that.
And I definitely came a long way from where I started. It was really cool looking back on all those pictures and all the things that I had to say about those experiences back in the day. My final summit was just a singular summit. It was a nice, steady, gradual 10 miles round trip. The day threw pretty much everything at us, though. It was one of those scenarios where, you hope the weather gets better as you're getting closer to your hiking date. And it actually just kept getting worse for that particular day. The entire drive to the trailhead, it was just raining. It set the mood really, really well. When we got there, it was just completely cloudy the whole way up. There were kind of viewpoints throughout, couldn't really see beyond the trees. When we got to the summit, it was actually the same way. The picture up top shows what the summit looked like when we first got there, totally socked in. I was still insanely proud of the accomplishment, but needless to say, I was a little disheartened by what I saw. I went with a really great group of friends, though, and they were willing to stick it out with me because there was sun in the forecast somewhere, and we were just really determined to stick it out and see it through for hopefully good weather, which we did finally get. We spent almost 2 hours on the summit that day, just reminiscing on all of my past hikes, just tons of sass and bad jokes, because that's who both of these friends are. And it ended up being a bluebird sky after those 2 hours, and it just broke to the most beautiful fall views, and it couldn't have been a better finish. And I'll probably touch on it a little bit more later when I go through lessons learned and stuff like that. Just for fun too, I threw together some statistics about this feat. Like I said, it took 4 years for me to accomplish all of these hikes, 27 of which were in 2022 though, so I really ramped up my game this year. That totaled about 377 miles hiked, with over 100,000 feet of elevation gained from all of those hikes. I went through 2 pairs of boots and ripped 2 pairs of pants along the way. I had 4 different packs to lug all of my stuff around, 3 bailouts that I turned around on a hike for any given reason and had to go back a second time to get to the summit, 1 bee sting, but 0 falls throughout the whole time. So I'm pretty proud of that. And for anyone out there who might be looking at those really scary numbers and wondering how any of this was possible or how they could accomplish something like that, I really, as I maybe sort of alluded to, didn't have any sort of prep. I kind of just jumped into it. Some things that I found helpful along the way, though, definitely not required, but what was just helpful for me, starting small and working on increasing your vertical gain is definitely a huge benefit. whether it's starting with a smaller list, like that 52 with a view list, like I mentioned earlier, or just working on doing more mileage without elevation gain somewhere local around your home. All of that will help out getting to your goals. And just use the gear that you have. I know there have been a lot of back of the pack informational videos on gear and things like that you don't need anything fancy, and that's totally true. And ultimately, perseverance is what pays off, that you shouldn't get discouraged and just keep chugging along towards your goal, and you'll eventually get there. And as far as nutrition and exercise, I really didn't do anything different, just really keep doing what you're doing. No need to change your diet as long as it's fulfilling what your goals are at that given time. Definitely drink a lot of electrolytes before, during, and after. This was one of the things that I wasn't super great about starting out, just taking care of my body and fueling it in the way that it needed to be for all of these strenuous hikes. I noticed a difference when I made that change in my practice. And just on your off days, doing some cardio for endurance purposes and strength training for stability and just helping maneuver some sketchy rock areas and stuff like that. And now jumping into the meat and potatoes of the presentation, I first wanted to start out by saying that I hate hearing my voice. I don't need to be talking for an hour. So I definitely encourage anyone to just raise their hand, interject, however you want to do it, to share any experiences that you might have. Because while my experiences might be valuable to some, so are yours as well. And there's a lot that we could learn from each other about these different experiences. And just because I had these experiences one way, you might have had them in another. And I think it's a really great way to just, we can all learn from each other. And there are also tons of pictures in here too. So I apologize. I kind of had too much fun just going through all of my memories and stuff like that. So I might throw in some tidbits and fun facts about pictures along the way. First, to start out with the pictures, on the left-hand side, the 4 photos on the left, those are some very newbie Katie hiking pictures. Those were probably, I think, within my first 6 4,000 footers. So that was definitely in my, like, didn't know what I was doing or that I was committed for the long haul, but still just kind of enjoying the moment, if you will. So first up, learn to push your boundaries without hurting yourself, which is a very literal thing to say, I guess, because you could be thinking of that as hitting a PR in the gym or working on more mileage to reach that marathon goal that you're aiming to do in a few months, anything like that. And definitely during this process, there was terrain that challenged me in a very physically demanding way. There were some slips that I had along the way too that were a little dicey, but I think from this, I always say that the most growth comes from pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. And there's a lot of value in, while you're doing that, to make sure you're not doing anything that's detrimental to yourself emotionally as well. Because I think if you're pushing yourself too hard and are almost too relentless to a goal, it can definitely be just really heavy and almost in a way like deter you from getting to that next step.
One of the there's 2 sayings in my family that kind of go along with this, and one of them is know your limits and play within them. And then number 2, this is something my dad said to us, like anytime my brother and I would leave the house when we were growing up, our dad would say, be safe, do good, and have fun, in that order. Which was always, and I guess then there's a third, that's the summit is only halfway. So those are all like kind of reminders of like, go out and have fun, but yeah, like come home. Like,
I know,
yeah.
Not as motivating as those, but one of the jokes that my friends and I would always say after we got to the summit, we would joke that it's only downhill from here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But the ears are way more motivational. For sure. I love a good family saying too.
Yep.
Those are good.
Classics.
And next, which I really truly owe Back of the Pack a lot for this, and you get a lot of credit for this one, but time doesn't define friendships. Um, Citing the Evergreen trip, for example, kind of where this concept like was really ignited again for me. Um, I feel like whether you've known someone for 1 month or 1 year, time doesn't dictate how close you can be with that person. And I know there are a lot of cliche um, sayings out there, I guess you could say, that um, sometimes you'll feel closer to someone that you've known for, say, that month of time versus someone that you've known for 10 years. And some of my closest friends now are those that I really haven't known for all that long. And since I joined the Back of the Pack community, even before I went on a retreat or anything like that, I was definitely inspired to get out of my comfort zone and push those boundaries a little bit with getting to know new people. And something really great about this experience here was that there is a hiking buddies community within New Hampshire. It's a much larger scale and it's quite literally just a Facebook group, but it's a way that we're able to connect with strangers on the internet, much like this, and just get out there in the mountains, explore new trails, make new friends. And I definitely would not have had the courage to do that without this community, which has been really profound. And I haven't been on a lot of these hikes here in New Hampshire with anyone from that group, but I've met other nurses. I've met some people who do grid hikes, which are just hiking all of these mountains in every single season and every single month, and people from so many backgrounds that I gradually have been able to call friends of mine and that I would love to see out on the trails again. And actually, jumping forward really quick to the pictures here. So, the right upper picture, that group of us there, those are people that I met from this group that took on the task of hiking 20 miles with me, hiking 20 miles with a total group of strangers. That was one of the amazing ways that this journey has helped me kind of overcome some of my social anxiety and talk to new people and hear about their own journeys. One of them actually celebrated their 4,000 footer finish on that traverse, which was a really, really special experience to share with them. And you'll see in a lot of these pictures that I'm with other people, and I've done so much of my journey with friends and things like that. I actually have only done one of the 48 solo on my own. And part of this experience, I think, became all that more meaningful because I was able to share it with other people, which was really, really awesome. And I imagine, especially since we're all here, part of Back of the Pack, I can imagine you guys might feel similarly. And then moving on to number 3, deciding to try again another day is not failure. So I mentioned earlier that I had 3 different bailouts on my hikes. Mostly were due to inclement weather or just starting a hike and feeling like something wasn't quite right, that maybe it was too slick or something like that. And I made the decision to turn around. All of those experiences were incredibly disappointing and were really tough pills to swallow, especially as someone who wanted to pursue this goal and got turned around after having like my sights set on a peak that day. And I think this can be so applicable to other walks of life too, whether it's, say, you're in school and studying for an exam, and you just get so like frustrated and caught up and confused on a topic that it's okay to close things, whether it's a literal book or just close something in your life for that particular day and revisit it again the next day. I think it's easy for people, especially myself, to become disappointed and frustrated when I can't quite live up to the standards that I've set for myself. And I think it's really important to know when it's okay to call it quits, and that it is okay to call it quits sometimes and try again the next day.
Hmm. I'm gonna throw another familyism in here.
Please do.
I love this. Um, another thing, my dad loves sayings like this. And one of these days I'll tell him how much they all mean to me. But he always says, the mountains have been there a long time and they'll be there a lot longer. And that was like another one of those reminders of like, yeah, go out and have a good time, but like make sure you're gonna like come home to adventure another day. So it's a good reminder that like it's okay to not go a day, and yeah, they'll be there the next one.
Yes, it's almost like you're reading my mind, because we
Mm.
might touch on that a little bit
Nice.
later. Then actually, it was the next one. Look at that. So no matter how long you've been doing something, you're never too seasoned for advice. So definitely, I would not consider myself an experienced hiker by any means, despite all of the miles that I've hiked, because I am so frequently humbled by the terrain. And it just goes to show, like, interacting with people on the trail or communities that you're part of, that you're always being introduced to new ideas. And there have been a lot of people doing these hikes in the White Mountains and around this area that have lost their lives due to ill preparation. Just this month alone, actually, I can think of 2 different stories that hit the news where people either got lost and unfortunately didn't make it out, or took falls off of cliff sides and couldn't be rescued. And while that is very directly related to hiking, I think this can also be applied to your job. Working in healthcare, we see this a lot. So shout out to all my nurses out there too, that, or regardless of what field you work in, there are definitely times where you'll have that really seasoned person who just lives in their old ways and doesn't want to take any advice from newer staff or anything like that. Or even in terms of getting advice from your friends and things like that, or your parents, because you think that you know best about whatever topic it may be. It's really important to just sometimes take a step back and humble yourself. And regardless of who it is, there's literally something that we could learn from every single person out there. And I think it's important to just kind of have that like introspective mind about it. And that being said, even if you consider yourself an expert on something, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. More pictures. Let's see. Fun facts for these. There are a lot of gray jays, as we call them, like the upper left picture, that if you have food, they will just come eat out of your hand. So that's super duper fun. And some of these, the bottom 2 right photos, kind of demonstrate what kind of treacherous terrain we kind of have to deal with. Believe it or not, those 2 steep sections are not part of the terrifying 25. So you can only imagine what those hikes are like when we do them. Next, this one's a little silly and fun, but it feels pretty damn good to be brave. Kind of like you saw in those steeper pictures on the last slide. I'm not afraid of heights, but I'm afraid of falling. So definitely during this process, had to pull up my big girl pants and definitely embrace the suck and just be brave, which hasn't always been the easiest thing. Even just in everyday life, it can be really hard to be brave, whether it's asking for the raise that you know you deserve at your job, or asking someone out on a date, anything like that. It's really scary. It's really scary out there to do big things like that. But after you do them, it feels really, really fantastic. And there's nothing else like that feeling. And if you haven't had that feeling, I definitely encourage you to put yourself out there and try something that you can be brave for yourself.
I use this as a plug for the Back of the Pack retreat. It was scary, but amazing.
Yes. And then the second half of these are a little bit deeper, I guess. I promise I'm not going to cry on anyone, but they're a little less lighthearted and more just like deep life advice that I feel to my core. So, kind of going off of the bravery thing, sometimes it might take years to feel emotions or feelings that you need to, but it's never too late to. Um, I know one of those things is imposter syndrome that I feel very deeply in my soul. And it's imposter syndrome, again, can relate to hiking, the workplace, to another hobby that you're trying to get good at or practice. And that stuff also isn't easy to overcome and navigate through. And I know for myself, like my imposter syndrome, for example, that has been years in the making for me to work my way through it, to navigate through all of those trenches. But it's never too late to get over those hurdles and sort of unpack feelings that you might be trying to avoid. And definitely being in terms of the NH48 journey, it took a really long time for me to feel proud of myself during this journey. And because a lot of my friends were coming up to me saying how proud I must be and how awesome and like amazing it is that I was finishing and or when I was nearing my finish. And it was kind of sad to me that as I was approaching the end, I was going through a really rough patch and trying to figure out why I was doing this and like finding out my why and everything. And it really took some soul searching and self discovery to find those proud feelings that were inside. And it kind of made me look in other areas of my life too, and kind of looking into what other feelings am I not allowing myself to have. And yeah, but it's never too late to make those discoveries. We have some more pictures here. Another gray jay, of course, had to make an appearance. A really cool thing about the whites, just as a little side note on some of these, is how varied the terrain is here. You can see that some of the paths are fairly flat and just ground or gravel, that sort of thing. But we also have really expansive open traverses, like shown in the lower left picture. So really, all of these hikes were so different and varied that you would never get bored. And the views are so amazing that I would honestly do these hikes again and again without any shame. Number 7. So I'm sure a variety of this exists elsewhere, but how you speak to others on the trail, it might say a lot about your personality and how you treat others, but really how you talk to yourself shows your true character. And I know I touched on this a little bit just regarding imposter syndrome and things like that, but it's truly wild to me how cruel we can be to ourselves sometimes. And I find the way we talk to ourselves, we would never talk to another person like that. And it's really sad that so many people do have such a almost just mean inner dialogue with themselves. And that was something that I was trying to work on over this year, that just being more meaningful in not only the way that I talk to others, but also talk to myself and just reframing that internal dialogue. And it's definitely not easy. It definitely takes time. I am far from perfect on that matter, but I've met a lot of other hikers that feel similarly. It's super easy to psych yourself out on a trail too, and think that you're not physically capable of making it up that steep rock wall or navigate your way down a really like wet area that's essentially a stream in the middle of the mountain. Um, there's just so much to be said about how we treat ourselves and how we could be so much better at it. Um, does anyone else have any thoughts or feelings or experiences relating to that topic? Because I feel like that's something that um, maybe almost everyone has felt at some point.
100%. What you were saying really resonated. Yesterday we had a ton of rain down here, so went waterfall hunting yesterday, and I gave up like halfway up to a waterfall because it was rocky and steep, and we did tons of stream crossings. And I was looking at the last little bit, and it was straight up a hill, and I thought, I'm done. I'm over it. And so, I was pretty mad at myself in the moment, but I was over it. So yeah, you're just really speaking to me. Like, I know I could have done it, and I just chose not to because I was just feeling very like defeated by that trail at that time, because it wasn't actually a trail. But yeah, so just know that what you feel is, you are not alone. I resonate hard with that.
Good. Yeah, definitely in trying to share some of these things, it's like I said, while it's my own experience subjectively in this instance, I hope that others watching this can also feel similarities of like, oh, like I'm not actually alone in X, Y, and Z. Um, or like I said, the more the merrier. If anyone else has other tidbits of how they've experienced this, whether it's on the trail or in real life, I think that's really profound to just share and add that value into this conversation as well. And so for this one, I am the queen of the saying, pursue what sets your soul on fire. You can find it in like every social media that I ever have. But this really, really hit home for me a lot during this process. So back in like August, September, when I was nearing the end of my journey, the last couple of months, I totally was in a funk and had no idea why I was pursuing this list. And what I mean by that is I was really hustling to check stuff off over the summer. And as you could tell by the 27 summits that I hit this year, I did pretty much nothing but hiking. And there was someone who I did a lot of my hikes with, one of my best friends. But while I was inspired by them and just really wanted to hike all of them with this person and finish together and all of that stuff, in that process of doing all of this hiking with this individual, I kind of lost sight of why I was doing it for myself. They were someone who I think at their core inspired me to do the NH48 and to check off all of these mountains and to hike them so relentlessly. But due to a falling out that happened, I really had to look within myself and figure out why I was doing this and to make sure that I was doing it for the right reasons and have a finish that I was proud of and that it was something that set my soul on fire and not somebody else's. So that was a really sobering part of this journey, that I actually took a little bit of a break from hiking. Instead of doing 2 hikes a week, I took 2 weeks off just to kind of talk to some of my friends through this process and kind of figure out my whys. And I guess here's maybe a good part to like talk about my whys, that I know sometimes when people do this list, it's all about like just banging through it as fast as you can. And even though I did it in 4 years, which is a fraction of the time that a lot of others have completed it, I really wasn't doing it for the list. I mean, the views were awesome and it's obviously a huge accomplishment. But I think more than anything else, I really did the hikes because I enjoyed personal connection, the vulnerability that you can really experience with other people out there. It's just unlike anything else, in my opinion. And that's really helped me come to some realizations outside of the trails as well, that it's really important to live your life for yourself and not anybody else. And I know that's something that I've personally struggled with, clearly both in the mountains and in other aspects of my life. But at the end of the day, your happiness is the most important. You can't pursue things or live your life a certain way just to make somebody else happy. And I know that's probably, again, like a tough pill to swallow for some people. I know it was for me. But yeah, definitely pursue what sets your soul on fire, not anybody else's. Moving on to more photos. More of the epic terrain, including some wooden ladders that we have hanging around. Fun fact about the wooden ladders, though, most of them aren't bolted into the rock. So some of them aren't very safe. Usually I'll try to climb around the ladders because it's almost just not worth going up them. Moving on to number 9. This kind of also piggybacks on my last one, that there's no timeline for us to meet our lives. You just have to move forward at your own pace and enjoy the journey. So I feel like I talked about most of this already with number 8, but definitely I feel like in the age that we're at, it's always, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? And just so we all know how those conversations go, right? And everybody's journey is different. Just like with my own journey and kind of how I got to my career and how I'm even living my life now, I always say that growth isn't linear, and growth could be viewed as the journey, right? It's going to be a roller coaster. There's going to be up and downs. It's never a straight line that gets you from point A to point B, right? And despite what books may say, what the internet may say, there's nothing that we have to accomplish at a certain time in our lives. And accomplishing things at the age of 25 is still just as impressive if you're doing it at the age of 55. And whether it is a hiking journey or list that you're trying to check off, or a gravel race that you're trying to train for, there's nothing set in stone. You kind of just have to be the author of your own journey. And it may not always be in super neat handwriting. It might get messy sometimes. It might look like a doctor's handwriting. If you know, you know. But yeah, just enjoy the journey. And honestly, also with hiking, everybody is so obsessed with summits, and I get that peaks are gorgeous. I love them myself, but you really have to appreciate getting there too. And hikes are never fun. Like, I've hiked with so many people that once you get to the summit, they're basically tapped out. They're done for the day. And hikes just aren't fun if you dread the whole way down. You got to be in it for the long haul. Next, number 10. So this one's a little bit different, but sometimes we put ourselves in boxes because it feels comfortable. So when I was going through my period of not knowing why I was doing this, and just all of that growth, I kind of felt like I was put into this box over the summer. Not that it was a bad box to be put in, but I feel like between my coworkers and my friends and my family, I was just that hiker. Like, all I did was hike. And that somehow became my whole personality, which again wasn't a bad thing. But as someone who likes to try new things, who loves going to the city to try a bunch of new restaurants, who loves to go to concerts and dance their heart out, I didn't want to only be the girl who hikes in all of her free time. And that is sort of where I was put at a crossroads with some other people that I had hiked with, that there was a time where I was faulted for not prioritizing hiking as much as I should have, because I chose to involve those other fun things in my life that I cared about. And that had me thinking a little bit that there are other boxes that we kind of put ourselves in sometimes, whether that is, I know I reference work a lot, but it's because I have all of these growing pains at work that make me think of it. But sometimes we're put in a box at work and are okay with feeling comfortable, but we don't necessarily love the environment that we're in, or we're not satisfied with the educational opportunities we're being given. Or it might relate to a relationship that you maybe aren't the best fit for someone, but it's comfortable and you know them and they know you. And it's scary to break outside of those boundaries and be something else, or learn to navigate life outside of the constraints of whatever it may be. And yeah, it's one of those things where I go back to my saying about how growth happens when you're out of your comfort zone, and boxes are really comfortable. I've certainly put myself in a few over the years, in addition to the hiking situation that I mentioned earlier. And I think we have to break down those boundaries, break down those walls, and find what is really meant out there for us.
Yeah, I just want to say that talking about like boxes, and I've talked about this recently, but I think we see it a lot particularly in nursing, just because I think a lot of nurses like really identify as like, I am a nurse and like that's my like identity and that's my box. And I started to introduce myself as like the founder of Back of the Pack, like before I even mentioned nursing. And it's so scary because like the box of nursing is like very tangible for people. And so the tangible for other people makes it like really comfortable for me. So yeah, it's definitely, it's like a real life thing too.
It's hard, man, but we'll get through it.
Yeah.
And here are some more photos from some of my journeys. The lower left is another picture from my 48 finish hike, and just goes to show how awesome of a day it actually turned out, despite all of the clouds that were earlier in the day. Sometimes, though, the summits don't clear, like the top middle picture. There are some peaks that I have no idea what the view looks like, so I'll have to go back and check them out. The top right is actually a photo that, a bit of a background on that, something that I was incredibly self-conscious of, and still kind of am, wearing knee braces and have them be visible when my leggings don't hide them. There's just something about that, like struggling with knee pain and arthritis and things like that. It just made me feel like there was something wrong with me, like looking like from the outside, just like an able-bodied, like mildly fit, but she enjoys her sweets kind of kind of builds. Like there was just something that made me feel bad or like ashamed that wearing braces was more comfortable. And it really wasn't until the last, I'd say like last fourth of my journey, that I really embraced the knee braces, no pun intended. And yeah, and didn't feel bad about having them be seen in pictures, which is like kind of silly, but I viewed it as a slightly like body image type thing. So moral of that story here, it doesn't matter what you look like on the trails, because it's the views that matter. Nobody's looking at you, just you are. And for number 11, you can't always control the circumstances, but you can control how you respond to them. So this is another one that I have felt to my core. Like I mentioned, there were a lot of summits that it was just straight clouds, wasn't able to see anything, which was definitely disheartening, and at the time took a bit away from the experience. But as I was hiking more of the mountains and just figuring things out, I really realized that when you prioritize the experience over the view, that can change everything. So, kind of like with my final hike, um, even though I was bummed about all of the clouds that we were greeted with at the top, I had a blast with my friends on the way up. We saw some cool animals. There was awesome foliage. There was so much else to be thankful for. And if you let the circumstance control you, it's so, so easy just to get upset and have hurt feelings. And it just takes away from the journey and the experience altogether. And yeah, again, this is an easier said than done aspect, but I think it's a really important one that we can all learn from. And then last but not least, it might be hard and it might take time, but if you hang in there long enough, you'll find the strength to overcome any challenge that you face. When I started hiking the 4,000 footers, I not only did I not know what the list was, once I got into the depths of it, I didn't think it was something I was going to be able to do. There were hikes that I struggled to sleep the night before because I was so anxious or worried about it. But then I got out there on the trail and had the time of my life, the literal best day ever. I can vividly remember one of the hikes that I was dreading so much and just had so much anxiety over. It ended up easily being one of the best of my entire 48. But even though, despite it being one of the best, it was still long, still grueling. My knees were really sore by the end of the day. But if you take all of these experiences, all of your life experiences or what have you, all of the lessons you learn from them, they can help you get to where you want to be. And I don't think there is any challenge hard enough. I don't think there's any challenge too hard, rather, that you can't accomplish it. Sometimes you have to kind of break that challenge down into bits and pieces. Like you might have to say just 1 foot in front of the or 1 foot in front of the other, or you can do anything for 1 mile, which I tell myself all the time. But yeah, I figured I would end here because it's a very nice all encompassing one. And we have it all in us. We just have to believe in ourselves. And that being said, I wanted to just end here and kind of open the table for any questions, comments, storytelling about any of the lessons that I shared. And I just wanted to thank Laura again, the whole Back of the Pack community, anyone watching. This was a really exciting opportunity for me, and it honestly means so much that I've been able to share parts of my journey and also some of the lessons I learned along the way with you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Katie. That was awesome. Makes me want to think about we talked before how I have no interest in doing all the 14ers, but I'm like, what kind of list could I do? Which I think is probably the San Juan ones. I have a couple questions, and other people please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions. How many, because I know that a lot of them are traverses, right? How many, what's the most that you did in a day?
The most I've done in a day is 5.
Damn. Ow.
That was a
your legs feel?
voluntary traverse, though. That was a voluntary traverse. It's not commonly 5 in a row, but there are a lot of huts scattered throughout the White Mountains. So you essentially camp out in a cabin of sorts that's owned by the Appalachian Mountain Club, who are the owners of, or they maintain the White Mountains and stuff. Okay. So that 5 was during a backpacking or overnight trip.
Cool. And then you mentioned the AMC, and I had a question about the patch that you got. How do you do you have to submit pictures from every hike, or you just tell them hey, I just finished it? How does
Right.
that like
So
regulatory body work?
it is based on the honor system. So per their website, since the 1930s, when this hike since the list was first documented, only 4,000 people have submitted to receive the patch. And it's based on an honor system, and you write an essay or a little paper of sorts that's a reflection of your journey.
Okay.
Most people do it regarding their last hike, like their final ascent, things like that.
Mhm.
But there's really no prompt other than just share your thoughts and feelings and tell us about your experience.
Awesome. That's super
That's cool.
I wonder if the 14ers have something like that. I'm gonna have to look into it.
They probably do.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot more lists outside of little New England here.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any interest in doing the 52 with a view or the terrifying 25? Or you probably have done a lot of them or I don't know.
I've done some of them, just some 52 with the views are like nice little local hikes that are only about 4 or 5 miles. So they're super great to just do on a whim. I've done maybe about 15 of those, not really purposefully, just having done them over the years. And I haven't specifically sought out to do a terrifying 25, but I've coincidentally done about 8 of them.
Okay.
Between 52 with the views and the NH48. The trails just happen to be on the terrifying list, unfortunately.
I'm so impressed that you've done any of them because, like you said earlier, I am how you phrase it is 100% where I am at. I'm not necessarily afraid of heights. I'm afraid of falling. So all of the scrambling and stuff, I think would freak me out a lot.
I've needed a lot of bravery to get through it. Pep talks from friends definitely help too.
Okay, well, I have a question for you. So what I struggle with, I don't think motivation is a word. I think my type A-ness, like I know I'm gonna feel so much better and I'm gonna love it once I'm out there, but it's so easy on a Sunday morning to like, I really should do laundry today and get groceries and get myself ready for the week. And so a lot of times I'll like just talk myself out of it. And like yesterday morning, whenever Peter and I went hiking all day yesterday, I was so grumpy all morning because I just kept thinking about all the stuff that I needed to do. And poor Peter had to listen to me be grumpy about it. But then like once we got out there, I loved it. I had so much fun. It was a great day. And you know what? Groceries and laundry waited and it was fine. But like, how do you talk yourself into like not getting excuses to like get up and do the hard thing that's ultimately going to be awesome?
Right. It is hard some days, believe it or not. I've had plenty of like 4:30 a.m. wake ups to do these hikes, but I've also had ones where I snooze my alarm 5 times and then end up rolling out of bed at 9 or 10. My biggest way that I started to get better about it was even if I had a late start or something like that, I would just pick something close to home, like just do something local. Doesn't need to be a huge endeavor or anything like that. Doesn't need to be epic, just an epic time, right? And I would just get myself moving, get myself outside, even if it meant not summiting on any given day, like say that there wasn't enough time or anything like that. Even just giving myself 2 or 3 hours just to enjoy the fresh air and being outside. And that's sort of how I started small, or on days where I feel totally unmotivated to get out of bed, just getting that little bit of exposure makes, believe it or not, a huge difference. And then eventually you work your way up to doing crazy things like waking up at 4:30 for sunrise, stuff like that.
Nice. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And it was a great presentation. You are so wise and inspirational. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, I know what's next for you, but do you want to tell everyone else what's next for you?
Oh, well, if we're thinking about the same thing, next for me is going to be the Steamboat Gravel Race in August of 2023. I actually got an email from them earlier today about a winter training plan to, whip us into shape and stuff before it gets warmer and we can send our bikes out to the gravel again.
Very
But
awesome.
that'll be my newest endeavor during these winter months.
So exciting.
But yeah, I'm nervous, but very excited for that. That's definitely one of those things of pushing myself out of my comfort zone and breaking down those boundaries.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yep. Now you're going to be in the biker box.
Again, not a bad box to be in.
It's a good place to be.
This is a good place to be. This is a good literal box to be in.
Very cool. Anyone else have any last questions, thoughts before we all shimmy away to eat dinner or go to bed, I guess, if you're Katie.
Yes.
So it might be up there. Yeah. Do you work tomorrow?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's get you to bed. Well, thank you so much. This was super awesome. I really appreciate you sharing. Was a super rad presentation, and some of those pictures, I'm like, man, I want to run those ridge lines. Those look so pretty. Tanya says, great presentation. This is also fun. I have loud dogs and a sick child. Great to see you all again. Tanya, and we'll see you in real life soon, and Sarah, and then Katie, we'll see you in Steamboat. So that's super exciting.
Hi, I have a
Hi.
quick moment of silence. Everybody calm down. My daughter just left, but yes, this was I can't even imagine. I would love to come out there as well and see all of that. It was so beautiful.
Please do.
Now I'm like, yeah, now I just have to start Googling like, what can you accomplish like in Minnesota? It's like
I'm
the
sure
Superior hiking trail, but that would be a big one.
Yeah, Tanya,
Oh,
though,
yeah,
it
we
does
don't-
make me want to look up like what's in the Ozark Mountains. Like, sure, there's something.
Yeah, like what kind of goal do they have out there you can set and get a patch or anything?
also set your own goal. Make your own list.
True.
Yeah, we'll make you a patch. If you make your list, I'll make you a patch.
All right, great.
It has to be equivalent to this, though. All righty. Well, thank you again, Katie. This was awesome.
you.
And yeah, I hope everyone has a good night. It's so good to see all of you. This little mini.
No,
So good to see you guys
Yeah.
too. It's been too long.
Yeah,
it has.
night.
Good night.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.